And greetings and welcome to the February 23rd meeting of the Murfreesboro City School Board. We're glad to have those of you that are in attendance here, and those that are watching us live on TV, we're glad that you're there. Wish you were here. At this time, we have several students that we want to recognize who are going to come and lead us in our pledge tonight. Third grader Branson Huffmeyer from Overall Creek, Northfield third grader Kobe Ward, A.J. Gaines, Reagan Warren, and Fiona Mallory. I ask you to please stand for our pledge and continue standing for our moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now our moment of silence. Thank you.
Chairman Campbell.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Phillips.
I just want to take a moment and thank the parents for bringing the kids out today on this rainy night. These are some awesome kids, and I appreciate it.
I think the entire board appreciates young people as they come, and don't leave, stick around a while. We're glad to have you. Thank you for being with us.
Melanie.
It's always good to have young people at our board meetings.
Did you print this out?
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I would like to ask the board, please, if we could make one change in that agenda. And right before our communication section, if we could have discussion of Dr. Gilbert's evaluation, if that's okay with everybody, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Thank you. Dr. Brown, do I have a second?
Second.
Oh.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? And there are none. At this time, I'd like to welcome Mr. Wayne Blair. Mr. Blair is President-elect for Tennessee School Board Association, but more importantly tonight, Wayne is here as Chairman of the Rutherford County School Board, and we are glad to have him with us tonight. Mr. Blair?
Chairman Campbell, good evening. Board members, Dr. Gilbert, Councilman Washington, pleased to have a few minutes of your time. I guess I'm reciprocating your visit, Mr. Chairman, from a few weeks ago at the Rutherford County board meeting, and again, we appreciate having you then. Would like to bring warm regards from your sister board. We certainly are grateful for the spirit of cooperation, the partnership, the collaboration, if you will, as we work for all Rutherford County children and Rutherford County citizens. Doesn't really matter if they're inside a municipality or not. Again, they're all our children. And, you know, I'm not sure that we had the close ties that we have today when I first came on the board, but we certainly have made that a strong part of our relationship. Of course, we have such admiration and respect for our Director of Schools, and we have that same respect and admiration for your Director of Schools, and we feel like Rutherford County has two of the very best in the state, and grateful for your leadership. Tonight, again, just wanted to come and visit with you, and hopeful that maybe we can have board members visiting each other's meeting on at least a semi-regular basis. Tonight, I did bring some information with me to present that you should have in front of you. Probably first and foremost is our annual fact book put together by James Evans, who is our community relations coordinator, and I think you'll find quite a bit of interesting information regarding our demographics, our population, our building program. And I'll make sure I have my numbers. As of today, we have 42,672 students. That's a 12.9% increase over last year. We have 46 schools, which you already know. I didn't bring the building program because I thought it'd be inappropriate to bring that to you. We've approved as a board a 5-year program, but we haven't gotten the approval of our funding body, so we're going to wait till we get that nod before we share that with you. But it is coming, and we have a couple of schools that we would like to see on tap, a new middle school and elementary school in the northern end of the county here in the near future. Of the almost 1,300 students that we increased this year, probably over 800 were high school students, which was kind of a little change for us. And so our high schools continue to grow. Our newest high school, Stewart's Creek High, in its third year of operation, is really already at capacity, and we don't even have a full senior class. So Rutherford County continues to grow and expand. But again, would like for you to look through the fact book, and that will bring you some information that you may or may not know. I also brought you a sheet showing the student population of each school, and hope that you'll find that interesting, and the percentage of growth that each school experienced this year. And last but not least, as a TSBA board member, I also brought you something that's been near and dear to all of our hearts because we've all been out advocating for public schools, is the number of issues that's coming before the General Assembly presently, and also gave you the position of TSBA. I believe, if I counted correctly, there was 140 education bills before this General Assembly. I hope I counted correctly. And TSBA board in one evening vetted every bill and chose to support several, chose to oppose several, and were neutral on several others. But other than that, unless there's some questions that I could answer, I just came to again show my regards and have the spirit of cooperation that we continue to have, and hope that you know that you're always welcome, not only into our boardroom but also into our schools. So I do thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. We appreciate you being with us. Any board member have any questions or comments for Mr. Blair? Dr. Brown?
I would like to thank your board for being very active in the legislative issues that we've encountered recently, and specifically I would like to thank this board for the efforts that were made, especially Jared Barrett and Chairman Campbell in leading us to oppose some of the bills that I think would have been detrimental to Tennessee schools. So for all school board members, Rutherford County and Murfreesboro City, thank you for caring about our children.
Thank you, and we appreciate the collaboration and the partnership that we share.
Mr. Washington?
Chairman Blair, I appreciate your work. You know I do.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
With Rutherford County and Don Odom and board members and residents need to be aware that there's a lot of things at the legislature that may be detrimental to our school system right here for Rutherford County and for the city of Murfreesboro. So I want to tell residents to really be cognizant of what's going on. And our working relationship is very good between your board and this board and Don and Linda. It's really great. So I appreciate your cooperation and what you are trying to do. And behind the scenes, those on the city council, we got a lobbyist now that's going to work with trying to address school issues on the city side and the county side. Really, that's what's going to happen. So we're moving forward, and I appreciate your service.
Thank you, Councilman Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Again, thank you, Mr. Blair. Appreciate you being here, and always welcome you or any of your other board members and anyone else from county schools, because we realize that all of our students are eventually going to be your students.
That's right.
Correct. Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Campbell.
Thank you.
Board members, thank you, Dr. Gilbert.
I did get notice this afternoon that House Bill 1737, which dealt with hiring of communication person and financial person, and taking that away from any loyalty or control, whatever, by the director of school, that bill has been pulled.
Okay.
Which is good.
That's very good.
Yeah, we were all in favor of that. Thank you, Mr. Blair.
thank
Appreciate you. Members of the board, you have in front of you a gift from Wilson Bank and Trust Company for School Board Week, and there's a card going around that you can look at as well. Our next item, as we have changed our agenda a little bit, is our discussion of evaluation of our Director of Schools, Dr. Linda Gilbert. You have received a copy of that evaluation, and at this point in time, let me go over just parts of it and kind of highlight it. If anyone would like to see it verbatim, it is on the website. Isn't that correct, Dr. Gilbert? Okay. Remember that all of these sections, everything is based on a 5-point scale, with 5 being the highest, and of course 1 being not good, and at the bottom, way below expectations. The first part that you see in front of you is the perception from the administrators within the system, and overall, the average mean score is 4.31. Then if you turn with the Appendix B, the board assessment, board relationships, 4.36. Community relationships, 4.74. Staff and personnel relationships, 3.74. Facilities and finance, 4.51. Vision, 3.96. Student achievement, 4.2. And the overall mean score for Appendix B is 4.25. Pertaining to annual objectives, and there is a list there, overall mean score is 3.52. Overall, administrative perceptions and evaluation, 4.31. Board's assessment, 4.25. Annual objectives, 3.52. And the overall evaluation score at 4.02. And remember that this is on a 5-point scale. And I always have to kind of look at it and think, well, you know, if this was on a 10-point scale and this was somebody in professional baseball, if they could get 8 hits out of 10 times at bat, they've done pretty doggone well. Now, at this time, are there any questions or any comments from any board member or Dr. Gilbert?
I'd
Smith?
like to hear what Dr. Gilbert's thoughts about the evaluation.
Well, the evaluation is weighted, so your administrative perception is 15% weight, your board assessment is 35%, and then the annual objective is 50%. When we were discussing the evaluation, I said that I would like to mimic what the administrators have. So basically, the Appendix C is based on really test scores. As far as the administrator's perception, when I look down through here, I always look at, am I fair and am I accessible? I think those are two things that are really important, at least with my philosophy. Some of the things that, and also the relationship with administrators. So I was very pleased with that. I have some questions, but I think reflecting on that, I think some of that has to do with timing. Some of it may have to do with state law. Some of it may have to do with just this past year and some things that were going on externally in my life. But I very much appreciate the relationship that I do have with the administrators in the district, both the central office administrators and also the principals. I appreciate their thinking that I am accessible because I think that's important. I think it's important that they can call me anytime and track me down, hopefully. Also, the idea of fairness, particularly when it comes to their performance, I appreciate that score very much. So overall, I'm very pleased with the relationship that I do have with the principals and with the central office staff. As far as the board, I think looking at this, I can understand the scores that are there. If there are some that you would like to talk with me about, I'd be happy, or to share more about tonight, I'd be happy to do that. But again, I appreciate the relationship with the board. I feel like that there's an honesty there, and so I value that. As I said, I appreciate the accessibility that the administrators feel that I have, and I think that transfers over to the board. I feel like that I can tell you things and you can tell me things, and we can understand each other, and I think that's really important. I think where difficulty happens in a school district is when there are barriers, and so I'm glad that I don't feel like that we have those barriers, and I appreciate very much the relation the board members have with each other and with the school district.
All right. Ms. Ranier, and then Ms. Phillips. I went brain dead.
I do that all the time. I think it's important for the public and everybody to realize that on this 5-point scale, if you attained a 3, that's at expectations. So all of your scores basically are over that, and I think the public needs to know that. And on the part that unfortunately lowered this average a little bit is the fact that we knew the scores were going to be lower this past year, and those are the things that we have to mark, that we didn't attain those scores. So all in all, I think it's a great evaluation, and we value you very much.
Well, I value the board very much and what you do for the school district.
Ms. Phillips?
I just would like to echo Ms. Ranier's comments. I think you do a fabulous job, but I think it takes tremendous grace to sit here and be publicly evaluated.
Yeah.
And that just takes tremendous grace. So hats off to you, and I appreciate Miss questioning, how do you react and how do you respond, and the perspective given to us by Ms. Ranier about the test scores. We knew that would be skewed this year and probably next year too.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are important points. I do wish that as a board we can sit down and discuss vision some more. I think that's going to be important as we move forward with all the changes from the state. So, thank you.
And I will comment that I think this board, considering the constrictures that we have from the state and from the federal government, I think you do a magnificent job of making this school district unique in many ways. There are many ways we can't be unique, and we're aware of that. But I think that it matters.
Mr. Barrett?
I wanted to echo what Ms. Phillips said about the vision. I wanted to see a little bit more focus on that. That's one of the things us as a board, it's one of our 4 things, so I'd like to revisit that if we can. A couple of things you do well, and I also appreciate, are the partnerships, the local partnerships, especially with MTSU and our business partners and the church. I mean, your ability to reach out and get those partnerships, I really appreciate. And then also just advocating for our schools locally and at the state level. I know you do a lot of behind the scenes there, and I know I appreciate it, and I'm sure the rest of the board appreciates that as well. So thank you for doing that and continuing to do that.
Thank you.
Mr. King?
I'd like to congratulate you on the high marks from the principals. To me, the principals are, other than the teachers, are front line with both the children and the parents and the community. And it's a nice thing for me as a board member to see them score you more than most at significantly above expectations. And I think the public ought to be proud of the type system we have, that the principals think that highly of you. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I'll echo the comments that have been made.
Okay. Well, I will echo those just as well.
Lots of echoes.
It's not an easy job. I think we all know that. And if anybody has ever been involved in leadership positions, you know that there are decisions that have to be made, and you don't always have others that you can, not that you can't rely on, but that you don't have time to consult with. I go back to think about the snow days, and I know those had to be tough decisions, and many early morning hours and some late night hours. But I think we all recognize that the decisions that were made for the safety not only of our students but also of our staff as well. And I appreciate you and what you do for the school system and have done.
Thank you. Well, I want to say that it's a real pleasure to work with the people I work with, that the administrators, the teachers, the support staff, it's an amazing group. And those early morning phone calls are shared, so it's not, I'm not the only one that gets them.
I know.
I make some calls myself. Thankfully, they answer the phone, so that's a good thing.
All right. Anything else on the director's evaluation? Thank you very much.
Can't bring that up right now.
I will in a minute. Communication, Dr. Gilbert?
Lots of communications, so I'm just going to run through them. We have lots of congratulations. We have a teacher, Carrie Tisma, who's a fourth grade teacher at Overall Creek. She was the Channel 2 Educator of the Week. We also want to thank Mulligan Ministries and Whit and Lori Turnbow. They always donate coats, but in addition this year they've donated $2,000 to the Indigent Children's Fund, and so that is a real blessing and has become hopefully an annual event, but it's a real blessing what they do there. We have several that have been elected to and chosen to state committees, and so I want to go over those because these are important. Not only do they put our district in a good light, but also they bring back tremendous information for us. So Sonia Cox, who's an academic coach at Mitchell Nelson and also at Siegel, has been selected to be one of the regional content coaches for early literacy grades 3 through 4. And in that role, she will train thousands of teachers this summer in the state's regional educator summits. Also, we want to recognize again Sonia Cox and also Sarah Easterly. They both are coaches. They have been selected to represent Murfreesboro City Schools as participants in the Tennessee Grade 3 ELA Range Finding Committee. This has to do with looking at the scores and deciding what range should be proficient and really making judgments about the level of rigor. So congratulations to them. And these are selected. We do not send representatives. These are chosen among other teachers in the state. So I want to make sure that you understand that. Rebecca Few has been invited to be part of the Tennessee Teacher Leadership Collaborative, and that particular group will take a look at the vision of teacher leadership across Tennessee and make recommendations. Also, Rebecca has been selected to be a 3 through 5 mathematics bias and sensitivity review person, and these are the folks that look at the questions on the 10 Ready and decide whether there is bias there that needs to be corrected. So that's, again, an important committee. Meredith Davis is the third grade teacher at Scales. She also has been selected for that particular committee, the Bias and Sensitivity Review Committee. And Rebecca Tate recently was notified that she has been chosen to be part of TEA's Teacher Leadership Network. So those folks are all in positions of helping to guide policy and decisions in the state, and we're lucky to have and grateful to have people of that quality who are employed by this district that can have input. Sayward Ratliff, who is an art teacher at Mitchell Nelson, has received a grant from Cheekwood, and so Mitchell Nelson will have 3 professional artists coming to visit them to demonstrate their crafts for the students and to share their careers. We also have received a math science partnership grant in the amount of $394,000. This is a partnership with MTSU. And so I want to thank Sherry Arnett and also Rebecca Few for working very hard on that grant. And then finally, this last week, I believe, we were notified that Teacher.org has set us at 5th in the state among school districts as far as our district supporting teachers. And those are your communications.
Thank you, ma'am. Any comment on communications? All right, consent items. Do I have a motion? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. I just was thinking about how very much MTSU does for our school
Right.
system. And for them to give us a grant for professional development in math, which is fantastic, for $394,000, that's very significant.
Yeah, it is.
And-
They called us, Debbie Kimmons and also Jeremy Winters were the two primary people, and they called us actually about a week before the grant was due and asked if we would be interested in partnering. And so this will, 90 teachers, I believe, Sherry, that this will impact this year and next year. It's known as an MSP grant, but it will target math, and we will actually be kicking that off the first week in May? March. I knew it was an M month, but I couldn't remember which month it was. but it'll be great, PD.
Well,
You're
thank
exactly
you for
right.
your work on that. That's fantastic. So, and of course, that leads into the last item that you were talking about, being one of the top school districts supporting teachers.
There you go.
That just says it. So, anyway, that's very exciting.
Mr. King?
That fifth school district was out of, 107 or 207? It was a sizable number for us to come in graded fifth
Right.
in the state.
Yeah.
And the partnership with MTSU, what was it, 2 weeks ago, Candace McQueen, the Commissioner of Education, said that the lack of STEM education was almost at a crisis level. And here we are trying to get ahead of this curve.
Right. We'll really be focusing on math. In fact, tomorrow, during the principals session, we'll be hearing from Rebecca Few and also Tammy Pirtle, and we'll be talking about math interventions. So you'll see us working toward math and making sure that our students have the skills they need.
Right. Consent items. Do I have a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Bernier. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And there is none. Thank you very much. Action items.
We have before you the contract for Johnson & Bailey Architects to work on Black Fox. As you know, we presented to the City Council a 5-year plan of construction and building renovation projects, and we have 2 of those before you tonight. We are progressing tremendously on all the projects we have in the works, and so we wanted to get the Black Fox contract in front of you so they can start the planning. That construction on that will not start until next year, but we wanted to get that so they can do the planning and design work on it. If you'll look in your packet on, I think it's page 14, it shows the overall addition of 10 classrooms for Black Fox. 6 of those classrooms will be on the Kensington Drive side. The other 4 are on the side where the teacher parking is now. We're going to be adding an additional parking slot out front. This is in your board packet. What was just handed out was a copy of the contract with Johnson & Bailey. I'm sorry. It's in your packet. We're adding the 4 additional classrooms for a total of 10 classrooms. We will add additional parking out towards the main road. But this is the addition for up to roughly 200 additional students. Remember our conversations before. Black Fox, when it was originally designed, was designed for a classroom ratio of 25-1, with the state lowering the pupil-teacher ratios to roughly 20-1. We had the core facility to handle up to 1,000 students. So with these 10 extra classrooms, we can go back to handling 1,000 extra students. There is some construction coming in that area, which is quite extensive, and so we're trying to get ready for that. As you know, we'll have opening this for this coming school year. Hobgood is adding 10 additional classrooms as well, a gymnasium, a new two music rooms, some additional classroom renovations, and a stage area. So we're trying to build up the capacity of our schools based on the core facilities that we have at those 2. So the first contract we're asking for your approval on is for the Black Fox, and it's just the architectural design part of it. And so we would like to ask that you approve that one, and before we go to the Bradley one.
Would you say one more time where the additional classrooms are going to be located?
Yes, sir. Black Fox, we've split the 10 classrooms into 2 locations. One is 6 classrooms over on the Kensington, I think it's Kensington Road side, That's an yes. And it's off the back wing of the Kensington, 6 classrooms.
Which is next to the Circle Drive?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's not the 6th grade wing, which is directly on the Circle Drive. It's the next one up.
The Circle Drive coming in out of the other side.
No, it's going to be, you have the 6th grade wing, that's that front wing, and then there's another wing right here. The playground is right here,
Right.
and then you have one back here. It's going to be on this second one right here.
Toward public.
No, that is
No, it'll be the
side.
other one. It's on the Kensington side, but it's that second wing.
If you look, I think if you've got it on your computer, it's on page 13, where it shows the 6 classrooms over towards Kensington, and then the other 4 that are over towards the store.
Okay.
Okay. And then on page 14, it shows a better, closer picture of the actual classrooms. What we've done is we've asked the architect to draw the classrooms similar to what is existing at the school. Each time we go to a school, we don't want to totally change the configuration of those classrooms, so we try to keep it as close as we can. And Lyle Lynch is here from Johnson & Bailey this evening if you had any questions on this particular plan. He'd be more than happy to answer those, I'm sure.
Ms. Phillips?
On this end down here that has the 6 classrooms, it says new, is that ST storage? Is that new storage rooms? What's that in new ST?
Yes, that was my question too.
That is storage room.
And do we need to add any restrooms since we're adding like so many kids down that way?
Mr. Lynch, would you like to respond to the...
Are those toilets?
Where is Mr. Lynch?
Are these
There he
toilets
is.
right here?
Okay, there he is. Hey, Mr.
Yeah, there's the
Lynch.
gang.
These toilets right here? That's right.
Chairman Campbell, members of the board. Ms. Phillips, the answer is generally no because, again, the school was designed for 1,000 students, and the restroom facilities, athletic facilities, and other things were designed for that. So by reducing the student-teacher ratio and adding classrooms, we're back to the Plan A.
Okay.
I want to mention that Never is here because this facility was originally designed by Johnson & Bailey Architects in 1990. And at that time, we discussed possibly designing some spaces for additions, but we were sure that the school would never be added on to. So keep that in mind as we plan future schools. It never shows up. It just seems like just yesterday that I heard that.
Well, I have one last question, and that's over in the 4 classroom area over by, I guess, the store. One
Yes.
says new storage, and the other says new,
Mechanical.
oh, mechanical. So that machine, okay.
Okay, and actually each wing, one of those storage rooms on each side of the hallway will probably be needed
Okay.
for mechanical, electrical, and other service spaces, and then storage is the other. We can't quite match that brick and stone. It's very old. And so as we butt it, we kind of use that space as a reveal on the outside elevation, so we never have a direct joint because it's going to be a near miss, and we know this, so let's plan for it. And that's part of the reason for that setback that you see.
Ms. Smith?
So, in having the regular, and thank you very much for all you do for the school system.
Well, thank you.
The regular classrooms that we're adding, and that was a very good questions about the restrooms. So that means that these cannot be used for special ed? All these classrooms?
Let me let them address that, but let me address in the physical facility side that the upper grade classrooms at the northeast, where the 6th classroom addition is, those classrooms do not have restrooms in the classrooms. And the lower grade, which is at the lower left addition, there's 4 classrooms, you will notice they have toilets in the classrooms, which is appropriate for the lower grade.
Oh, okay.
But, so these classrooms that they're not, that for the older grades, they could never be used for special ed?
Joe, do you want to address that about thinking about the future? That area of town, do you?
I'm trying to come up with an answer to that.
Do we not have special ed issues on
Let me
this?
take more time and laugh all you want. Take more time.
I don't mean to make light of that, but we have not considered using that for expansion of our CDC classrooms, which would have the need for more bathrooms. Because what we've done, we've just expanded recently on the other side of town at Cason Lane. So we have capacity to grow from where we are, and if need be, we could, if we just came down to hard circumstances, we could use those classrooms. They would be in a wing with younger age children, but that would be the worst situation that we'd have to face. So I think that it's usable if we needed to, but at our current thinking, we're not thinking of adding any more CDC classrooms on that side of town.
What we have discussed is the possibility of pre-Ks over there, and that would handle that. You would need restrooms in the pre-Ks, and so I think that is one thing that we have looked at, is that need on that side of town for. But that's 2 years, a year away, and I'm like Mr. Lynch. We never say never, but right now we haven't.
I just think
talked
that
about the CDC.
with the growth that we have, that we need to have as much flexibility with these classrooms as we can, pre-K, special ed, whatever. Right. So then the other question that I had was, how was Mr. Thompson included?
Lyle, do you want to address that?
I believe it was last Monday. We had we took the plans that you see in front of you, the site plan and the floor plan, to Mr. Thompson. We went over everything, and he had some minor detail type changes to address, but overall he said that he and the staff are looking forward to the building. Specifically, let me address one, and that is the addition you see to the right side of the page, which is along Kensington Drive. It creates a recessed area, and he was concerned with that and requested that a brick wall or some other type of confinement be constructed across that to limit the depth, to keep people from non-school hours from getting back up in there. I think that's a fairly minor change, and that's similar to some containment walls you have at Hobgood and Northfield.
And where is this, Ron?
It is outside of the library. It's on the right side of the page. As we add the 6 classrooms, we increase the depth of the recess where the library is.
35, yeah, setback. So is this on the topographical map?
Sir?
Is this on the topographical map, what you're talking about?
It's on the floor plan or the site plan. What are you looking at, Mr. King?
Kind of going back and forth here.
Okay. It shows up on both of them. It's the new addition along Kensington Drive.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And as it's built, the depth back into the media center, where you have that staggered wall, is fairly extensive. And he was concerned about...
I think I see it now. Okay.
Yeah, so it's, the privacy that this would create back there, and wanted that. Like at the Northfield Playground, there's a wall there. Hobgood has that. He wants a similar thing here to enclose that area. That was the feedback from the school.
From principal, yes. Thank you very much.
Ms. Phillips, Mr. Washington?
One last question. Is this going to affect parking or playgrounds that are currently there?
I'm not sure about the playgrounds, and I know Murfreesboro Parks and Rec has some plans for your front yard. Let me address parking, though. If I can address that for sure. We are adding about 30 new parking spaces shown on the site plan along Rutherford Boulevard. We're doing so because we're eliminating about 15 parking spaces at that drop-off that's behind the kitchen area. And so in our schedule, we have the contractor starting work, and the first thing he has to do is to build the parking lot along Rutherford Boulevard, pave it, and open it up. Then he can go in the back, because otherwise parking would just not happen here.
So that would be an extension of the parking that's already there.
Right. It adds another bay of parking. Adds another bay of parking toward Rutherford Boulevard. Yeah, I believe that's Rutherford. Yeah, Rutherford Boulevard.
Mr. Washington?
All right, Lyle, I've talked to city council, and I'm an advocate of generators, either portable, where you can pull up, some kind of, when you can pull up and hit a transfer switch, you know what I'm talking about? With the growth, with the 2035 plan or whatever, I think that both boards need to understand that if a catastrophic situation hits this city or county, then people need to have somewhere to go. And that means the cooking, the lighting, the HVAC, and all that kind of good stuff. So I think that you as a board, both boards, county and, need to consider having strategic generators or some kind of plan to have one where you can plug up a 300 kVA, you know what I'm talking about, generator at these schools. So if something happens, you can house folks for
as long as needed.
For something that happens. We're not doing that. We're advocating doing that at the fire halls, but the fire halls are very small. If something catastrophic happens, the schools are the best place to go, where you can have cooking right there, you can have some lighting, not all lighting, you know what I'm talking about, strategic lighting, and have the gyms or whatever, where you can have cots and whatever, and people can go and stay for a temporary period of time. So you, as a board, consider having some kind of backup plan, so you can have some generators or a mobile generator that you can go around and plug up and take off in case something goes wrong, if that makes sense. That's a pretty penny, but when you need it, you'll be glad you had it.
Is that a possibility in these additions where we're looking at?
Not all of them, but some of them. Strategic,
That's really an electrical engineering question. I would think it'd be possible. I do know that there's emergency egress lighting in this building that's battery backup. So you have 4 to 6 hours of a little bit of lighting when the power goes out, and after that, it's dark.
Well, nowadays, with terrorism and all the stuff going on in this world today, you got to prepare for the unusual. And I would strongly consider having some kind of backup plan where you can run for days, if you had to.
Well, I think we have experienced a little of that within the past school year. We evacuated Black Fox one day. Now, luckily, it happened morning time, but it could have happened in the afternoon in a very cloudy, overcast day, or in November, and it would have been dark by 4 or 4:30.
Well, you can have a setup where you have a transfer switch, and all you have a mobile.
Yeah.
And you can just go wherever you want to go, plug it in, boom, you back on board.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Washington. Ms. Smith?
Well, in response to that, are there other things? Is there like a checklist? If we're making these changes, I mean, is there like a checklist for emergency evacuation sites that we needed to be including other than generators?
Possibly, but my thing is, I know how much when you're without power, with computers and all you got going on, phones and whatever, if you had a mobile situation just sitting out there at the central office or somewhere, and something went wrong, you just pick it up and take it over there, plug it in, and boom, you're back in business.
Well, I would be interested to know if there were,
so you don't have to have one sitting at every school, at different schools. You can go mobile or do both. You can have standby generators at certain schools, strategic schools like Overall Creek. It's way out there on the fringes. Okay. Yeah. Have a standby out there, or have a standby on the fringe. But have a mobile one sitting there where all you need is a transfer switch, and if the central office goes out for some reason, for a long period of time, for whatever reason, plug it up and go on. Get back in business.
Mr. Anderson?
We took Mr. Washington's advice when we built Overall Creek. It has a backup generator at that location. When the power goes out, we have refrigeration taken care of. That's right. We have our computer network is got a redundancy to it, so we back it up, and it's backed up there, so we put the backup generators there. So we did do that when we planned that building, and I think all future buildings will have those plans. As far as a portable, he's right, it's electrical engineering type of thing, but I like the idea of having one we can take somewhere, but it is extremely expensive to have.
Okay. Any other questions pertaining to Black Fox?
One last one.
Ms. Phillips?
And that is, if we are getting rid of that drop-off, will that affect the traffic and pick up and drop-off at Black Fox, Dr. Gilbert?
We're not, and correct me if I'm wrong, as far as the drop-off spots, we're not really changing those, are we?
We're losing
Let me
one.
look at it.
Moving, yeah, one out of the cafeteria,
Right.
backside.
Well,
Are we losing
it's
that
still
line?
there when we
It's-
finish.
yeah, it's-
But it
oh,
will
it's
be
there.
down during construction, and I've talked to, again, we discussed this with Mr. Thompson, and he was quite alarmed.
Yeah.
But he understood that there will be short-term pain for long-term gain.
Okay.
So it will only be shut down during the course of construction.
So even though you're losing, I guess maybe I'm not looking at the picture right, but so even though we're losing parking places there, the drop-off will still be there? Is that what
Yes.
you're telling me? Okay, I get it now. Okay.
And where that will be moved, if you're looking at the topographical map, on the left side, the main parking places that are there at the drop-off, you're adding another row of those. That's where you're picking up on the front. Not in front of the gym, but on the left side, where you already have the rows of parking.
What about the playgrounds, Dr. Gilbert?
I'm just going off memory, so it may be Mr. Campbell. I don't think it will affect it. I think that playground is inside. I think the playground currently will not be affected, I don't believe.
I don't think the playground on the Kensington Drive side
Right.
will not be affected by those classrooms.
It's
Right,
more.
because
It'll take part of that big field, which is,
The site plan you're looking at was drawn on the original construction documents from 1990. We currently have a civil engineer out performing an updated topographic and boundary survey locating all the site features. And at that point, we can determine if there's any other incidentals that'll have to be relocated.
I believe that you have gardens and maybe a playground between where the front wing is of the building and where we're adding, and then I believe there's a playground to the north of the wing that we're adding. I haven't looked at that, Ms. Phillips, but I'm just going on recall.
Obviously, if the survey shows a playground in the area of the new construction or the grading, we will try to relocate that similar to what we're doing out at Hopwood School
Okay.
now.
Thank you.
I actually found something, and there is a small playground, but it's got parentheses, not ADA compliant, so it might be one that's worth losing, if you will. Right there was where we would go. Now, I can't guarantee it'll take it up, but it's not much.
And this doesn't have anything to do with Mr. Lyle, but he did mention the Library Foundation, I guess, the Parks and Recs, I'm sorry, having plans for some of our playgrounds. And I just want to reiterate that it's very important to me that our children do not lose their ability to run around a field. And if they're going to be soccer fields that are super protected, then that's not in the best interest of our children. So I want kids to be able to be kids without it being too structured during recess.
Right.
So I just want to keep that on the radar there. So.
Thank you.
Dr. Brown?
My question is for Ms. Baker. Anytime I'm approving a contract, I want to be sure that someone has reviewed it from a legal standpoint and is comfortable with all the provisions within that contract. So I'm assuming that that's been done? Yes. Okay.
Good question.
Any other questions? So we need a motion to approve the contract for Black Fox. Am I correct? Yes. Ms. Smith?
So the contract would be with these existing plans as is, the floor plans as they are.
Yes.
I'll make that motion to approve.
All right, thank you, Mr. Barrett.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I am concerned about that we're not thinking ahead about the use of the classrooms. If we're building classrooms, I mean, I would love some conversation about that. If we're going to build classrooms, should we not make them flexible in how they're being used?
Okay.
I think that when you look at these, I think there's enough flexibility that as we would have in any other school. I don't think that you're going to have, I think that what you find is that principals will always work to have their grade levels together. That's a priority. As far as these particular classrooms, I think they're as flexible as any we have in the district. I think that when you look at our growth, every school has to have flexibility because we're growing too fast, and I'm comfortable with these plans. When I look at other schools, I don't see that they're any less flexible than anything else we have.
But these are new versus...
Well, they are new, but as far as when you look at overall is new too, and I don't see any difference here in what we did in overall or what we'll do in the next school. You're basically looking at classrooms that do have restrooms and classrooms that don't have restrooms. You're looking at it being mixing well with the plans that are already there. So I don't think there's. I understand what you're saying, and there does have to be flexibility because we don't know what classes will be put here. But I don't know that there's anything else that could be done to make them more flexible unless you wanted to put restrooms in all of them. And I don't know really that that's practical when you have a gang restroom right down the hallway.
Ms. Phillips?
In response to Ms. Smith's concerns, and I appreciate her sharing her concerns with us, maybe we, even if we go ahead and approve this plan tonight, maybe we can see a plan for the future of ways that we can keep our schools flexible with, future building.
Right. And I would be happy to research that, and if the board has any ideas about that with schools of which they're aware, I would be happy to listen to that.
Because I think it's important that we have, eventually with our growth, we're going to have more CDC classrooms, basically, and spread throughout the city,
right,
so that the families have easier access to them.
Right.
And I guess some kind of long-range plan. It doesn't have to. For me, it doesn't have to be today, but a long-range plan that includes and incorporates the ideas of flexibility and getting the most, for your money.
Right.
Being good stewards that way. But you see, I don't know the growth patterns for this sort of thing. I'm sure Mr. Marla would know more about that sort of thing than I do. And
we can certainly have, at some point, Mr. Marla, we can certainly discuss that, and also the pre-Ks. Unfortunately, when you're in a growth situation, some of the plans that we had to go by the wayside when we had so much growth. So, but we're still looking.
As we're planning our next new building, that would be a really good location. And since we included CDC classrooms in overall, so we have that as a possibility for expansion and changing later. But as we build the new building, that would be something we want to consider, because it'd be much easier to plan that, put that in as we're planning,
right,
rather than add it on later. So that's been sort of the thought that we've had.
Well, that's kind of what I was talking about. Yeah. Is this exactly what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but in thinking of retrofitting an older building, as we're adding new buildings, that we have that capability. So, and thinking about centralizing where those services go, the newer buildings will be the better places for us to think about adding that capability. That's just where we're thinking. I mean, that's the thought that as we've looked at new buildings, that would give us the opportunity to make sure we put in the expansion for CDC and the specialties. Because a lot of times retrofitting is really difficult to think about. Does that make sense?
It does, except I consider this a new building.
I understand.
It does make sense. And if you feel good about this, then you're the king of this situation. Is what I'm talking about.
At this building, We'll look at the next expansions, but we also, the planning for the new building will be the area that we want to think about for, as we're thinking about planning for, because we're kind of clustering our CDC classes so that we have them grouped together, so we can have the ability grouping, those sorts of things. So I think that will be safe that direction.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, we have a motion on the floor and a second to approve the plans for Black Fox as presented, with many notations and much very, very good discussion and good questions. Call the roll, please, ma'am.
Mr. Barrett?
Aye.
Dr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Ms. Rainier is absent. Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And Chair Campbell?
Aye. All right, thank you very much. Now we need to look at
The next plan is for Bradley Academy. We are proposing there to add some restroom facilities and some renovations at the right next to the gym and the cafeteria. Presently, they have no restroom facilities down there except for one single toilet that's shared by everybody. So we are looking to convert some area there into 5 women's and 5 men's facilities into a gang setup, which will help us when there's basketball games, gym class, anything for the cafeteria. It'll help us at that end of the building, so people will not have to go all the way to the other end of the building to utilize a restroom facility. So we have asked Johnson & Bailey to come in and design something for us at that end. By doing it this way, we have changed a small classroom that's over there now into an intervention room, and there are some nice renovation maneuvers down there that we'll be making. We'll be expanding one area that's currently where the teachers have a restroom facility. We'll be expanding that wall so that they'll be able to have additional room to use that also as intervention or for storage. So we're looking at making a change down there to better serve the community at Bradley. We cannot expand that school to make it any bigger, but when it was designed, they didn't evidently believe in as many restrooms as we believe in today. So we need to add some restroom facilities at this school to make it, especially with our basketball programs and our extra activities that go on at the schools now, we really need that. Again, Mr. Lynch is here if we have any questions about this plan. This one will be done over the summer as well and will be completed before school starts back this next school year, if we can get this approved and get the contracts out. Now, by the way, what you're approving is just the architect stuff. We still have to do all the bidding process, which we will be coming back to you on all those bids later. If any questions, be glad to answer them, or put Mr. Lynch up here.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes, Mr. Anderson. So do I understand that the teachers are losing their private bathroom and it's becoming, and we're creating a larger public area? Is that what's happening?
Mr. Lynch, you want to come up here and explain this one? If you look on the floor plan, we've had discussions over at the school there, and if you can see on the right-hand side, there's an area there. And Lyle, would you like to explain what we've been discussing on that?
Yes, the existing, I'll call it faculty, it's just a single toilet for the faculty. That's, we've been told to eliminate that and turn that into an intervention room. Then we're putting a public toilet with multiple stalls that's accessible from the hallway into the gym. We're also building a cross hallway doorway system that will allow a group to come in and use the gym, have access to the toilets, but not be able to get to the classrooms or the rest of the school. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think that's important. I do think that's important. But I am concerned, is an intervention, this is not my forte, but is an intervention room more important than the teachers having their private their private space? Because if I were a teacher, I think I might appreciate having a little private space. I don't know how important that is, but, I might, teachers, I just don't know. It seems like it would be.
I think actually the principal brought this to us and talked with us about this because they are in desperate need of intervention room. I know there is at least one, and don't have the floor plan right in front of me of the rest of the building.
There are 4 here.
But there is, I know, a faculty restroom in the administrative offices, and I'm trying to think if there's another one, Lyle, on that floor.
No, not in that area.
As I said, this was brought to us by the principal. She really felt very strongly about needing this gang restroom there, and I support her in that.
I support the gang restroom.
Right,
That's
right.
not it. But I see 4 intervention rooms in that plan. And
Yes,
I'm
I
wondering-
would say if you talk to the faculty and probably certainly to the principal, that was her desire to do that. We actually had planned, and I don't remember what the first plan was that she.
First
and then
plan
she
was
asked
to
us
keep that
come
as a
back.
toilet, and
Yeah, and
they
then
asked
she
us to
called us
turn
back.
it.
Right.
I understand that, but I just think you have to plan long range, and I think long range teachers might appreciate having their own private toilet. That's just my personal
Right,
opinion.
and I agree with you. If you'll remember, intervention is something that's required by the state, and they have a situation where they have 3 and 4 interventionists with a group of children in a classroom, and it's not a good situation.
Dr. Brown?
Mr. Anderson or Mr. Lynch, on the proposed floor plan, or on the far right, it looks to me like there are 3 restroom stalls there. What are those restroom stalls?
I'm not looking at your plan. Someone who's looking.
I see that there's 2 in one section, then there's another single unit
Yes.
further over.
What are those?
That's where the faculty ones where she was talking about to come in.
Okay, but they're still
Do
there.
those remain, Gary, don't they?
On the top right-hand corner.
Top
Yeah.
right-hand corner is what they have asked, the principal has asked for us to make that into an intervention room.
Yeah, this is, the plan we're looking at, so it was a preliminary proposed.
Oh,
And
okay.
the final looks just like this with a lot of details on it, with the exception that we've been asked to take this restroom out and turn that into an intervention room.
Okay, what is to the left of the 2 intervention rooms?
Still one.
There's a single stall there, Lon.
Yeah, that makes 5 interventions.
Is that a faculty restroom?
That's a lot.
No, to the left of the 2 intervention rooms are the new public toilets.
No, to the right.
No.
To the right is classroom. That's the little area at Bradley behind, the cloakroom. And then the little toilets within the classrooms. So that's what you're seeing to the right of the toilet.
That's not what I'm seeing.
I'm seeing a toilet.
I'm seeing 2 toilets.
Those are the toilets in that classroom.
No, those 2.
No.
The 2 toilets.
This looks
the
like a
2
faculty
toilets are the ones that the faculty use now, and the front section is where they store their paper and have a copy machine.
Right, so those will remain, right?
No.
No. No, that's what we're saying. This was the preliminary plan, and she asked to remove those 2 toilets
All right.
and to make that, remember, move that wall out further so it has more room in there
Okay.
for intervention.
So we need 5 intervention rooms? Is that what we're looking at? You got,
That would be,
you got 2, then you're gonna take the bathrooms, then you got 2 across the hall right by the steps, correct?
That's the program, sir.
And the building level administrator is good with making that an intervention room
Not a
and
toilet.
removing that restroom.
Correct.
Where are faculty or staff restrooms in that building today?
Today, they are at the location you see here and at the administrative area. The administration being where you
Okay.
enter near Patterson Park.
All right, so then, if my memory's right with that building, you will not have any faculty restroom facilities on the gym end of that building, correct?
Correct.
And the other one, right now, another one is down toward the front where the office is that correct? It's a long way to go for those people down by the gym upstairs and downstairs.
I
That's
agree.
not a short hallway.
It's not unusual. Think about, you've been in an awful lot of schools, that the faculty restrooms are in the administration and everyone in the school uses them. That's not an uncommon situation.
But there, in a lot of school plants, there is another one located.
Satellite.
Yeah.
Yes.
Satellite, that's a good word.
When-
However, I can remember where we're seeing this one restroom, they're going to take us to the intervention room, and that was it. That was the teacher lounge and the restaurant back in the day, many moons ago, as Tonto would say. Okay. Other questions? Comments? Mr. Barrett?
So they're removing the restrooms. What about all the stuff that's up in the copy machine, or the other things you mentioned in that? Where's all that going to go?
She had another location for it. I'm not sure exactly where she was going to put it, but she said she had another place to put it.
She had room somewhere else?
She said she did.
She assured you? Okay.
I'm not sure where she was going to put it.
Do we have time to have Ms. Ortiz come? Would we have time for her to come to the next board meeting and address the board?
That would be Mr. Lynch's question.
Okay.
Oh, we can, this is just bits and bytes in a computer. We can make it whatever after.
Because I know she felt strongly about this, and I think it would be good for her to address the board.
Well, I don't think we as a board are trying to do anything to undermine what Ms. Ortiz has decided on.
Right.
I would hope, and I'm sure that she has consulted with other members of her staff in regards to the restroom situation in the building.
I think it might be, I think it would be good for you to understand her reasoning and also the intervention needs, and part of that is to relieve part of the ELL rooms too, I think. But I think it would be good for you to hear her.
Then are you telling us we do have time for that if we don't approve this until the next board meeting?
What's in front of you is an approval of an architectural contract. I would recommend that be approved. What we can do is we're taking out work. Taking out work is not a problem. It's putting it in that we tend to get stuck with. The intention is to send plans and specs for this project to bidders next Monday. I'd like to proceed with that. When the board meets in a month, the board can say if it should listen to the principal and decide, we want to leave that toilets, then we simply process a change order to delete a little work and you get some money back.
Okay.
So that's the reason I think we can facilitate your needs and yet continue with the schedule so that the contractor will be ready to hit this hard this summer and get the work done.
Okay. I understand that. All right. Ms. Phillips?
Quite frankly, I think it puts the board and Ms. Ortiz on the spot to have her come and speak publicly and either agree or we don't agree, because I wholeheartedly believe that Ms. Ortiz is thinking of her children and the children in that school and what is how she can best arrange and plan. I appreciate her commitment, but my concern is that in the long term, we can't give much to our teachers. We can't give them the money they deserve, but we could give them a bathroom that's accessible to them. And that I would like to be able to do. That's easier to access. And so, that's kind of where I stand, is because I know she's committed. I know she's got good reasons for her decisions, but I think the board or possibly, or just myself maybe. I can only speak for myself. My reasons are valid too, and they're both goods. They're both just competing goods. It's just competing goods, and so I don't feel like I need to hear from Ms. Ortiz because I know she has very strong, very committed reasons. But I do believe that we can't do much for the teachers, but if we could give them an accessible bathroom.
I think her concern is she doesn't have room for intervention, and
She's
I think
got a bunch of them now.
Well, she does, and it's taking a lot, and she has situations where she needs room for the children. And I think, knowing Ms. Ortiz, I think probably, my guess is she may have discussed this with her faculty, I'm not sure. But I think she is in a situation where she feels that this is, and I absolutely hear what you're saying.
Well, those are just my thoughts.
Mr. King?
I just want to weigh in that we, on one hand, we do need new bathrooms, men's and women's, for the gymnasium for the basketball games, because what is currently there was built with the 1950s or 60s in mind. And so we do have to proceed. I recommend we do proceed with an expansion of the bathroom, but I think everybody's misunderstanding, mine included, is what I'm seeing is not what I'm hearing. And I hope I'm saying that right. And what I would ask is I'm not going to say a better drawing, but one, an additional that kind of is in relation to where the gym, I'm sitting there trying to picture, is this doorway here, or is this going to the hall or to the gym? And I kind of think of maybe a more updated picture, if you will, would help us understand, because we're seeing what we think is a bathroom and we're told, no, it's not a bathroom. I think that's where some of the confusion is coming in. But I am all in support of the project. I just think a little bit better understanding of what the project is going to result in.
Maybe a little bit more extensive, expanded drawing.
We have drawings of the whole building and how this fits in there. You know, it's not a problem. Just clicking the right button and we can show you exactly that.
Is it online right now?
And you are correct. What you're seeing is the toilet and the copy room was going to remain a toilet and copy room until a last-minute meeting with the principal, and that's when we changed that.
Are those drawings online right now so that we could look at without wasting time, maybe while we're here?
No, they're not online.
Okay.
But,
I didn't know if there was something we could look at.
Well, perhaps, as he said, maybe a motion to proceed to approve as is, and then we can always come back after we look at it more extensively in a couple of weeks and do change orders. All right. Dr. Brown?
I just wanted to ask Mr. Anderson what the time frame was as far as if this is approved tonight, letting bids and then having a contract and being able to start early enough in the summer to have it completed before school starts next year. So what are the time constraints on when we approve this?
Okay, I asked Mr. Lynch on that one, but he had just put together a complete chart of when they are. So Lyle, you said next Monday you're putting out the documents.
Plans were submitted several weeks ago to the Tennessee State Fire Marshal's office for review and approval. We haven't heard back from them yet. The plans go out to bidders Monday, February 29th. The intended bid date is March 24th. Teachers, the last day that the teachers are at school is May 27th on a Friday, and we're going to turn the contractor loose on Monday, May 30th, as soon as they're gone. We've left ourselves about 4 weeks between awarding a contract and actual start of work, because some of the materials in this project they order and they take about 4 weeks to get here. So we want to work hard and proceed now so that when we turn a contractor loose this summer, that during that 8-week time he can come in and get everything done and get it cleaned up before school starts.
Mr. Barrett?
Question, maybe I'm just asking the obvious question. So these are public restrooms or building, right? Correct?
Right.
Can the teachers use those public restrooms?
Yes.
They just won't have if they take this out, they just won't have the private restroom?
Right.
Okay.
Ms. Smith?
How many interventionists work at Bradley?
Sherry, do you?
Two. And there are 5 intervention spots?
But you also are going to have small groups that you'll have EAs working, correct? And you also have ELL that she may be including in this, because right now I think there are 3 LL in one room.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Do we have a motion on the floor?
I don't think we do.
Okay. All right, I'm looking for a motion then to approve the plan as is submitted? The architect.
Architect
yeah,
contract.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay. I have a motion to approve the architect's contract.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. King. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Call the roll, please, ma'am.
Dr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Barrett?
Aye.
And Chair Campbell?
Aye.
We have 6 ayes.
All right. Thank you very much. Dr. Brown?
I know that it's difficult to talk about spending money when you've got a school that you're using, but Bradley's been around for a long time, and I think at some point in time we're going to have to face a difficult decision of how long is that building going to remain functional. So I would ask that this board and Mr. Anderson at some point in time begin to think about how functional that building really is. So.
Okay. Mr. Barrett?
Another thing, too, since we've had questions tonight for principals affecting their buildings, it would be nice to have them here when things like this come before us so we could ask them these questions rather than trying to infer what they mean or being told what they told someone else. So just something to keep in mind for if we do things like this in the future.
All right. Reports and information.
Okay, the first report is a report on Tenready. And I'm just going to give you a little rundown of some things to make you aware, and also to express, I guess, my opinion at the very end, and I'll express that in the beginning. So my opinion is I'm thrilled that the governor and the commissioner had enough foresight to realize that this normative test is anything but normative, and to decide to relieve teachers of any responsibility as far as scores and how it would affect them. But I think that was a small piece of the puzzle. I think the rest of the puzzle, and I think that administrators would certainly agree with me, and teachers too, that we need to not have a public release of the scores this year if there's so much in question, and I think there's every right for them to be. And in addition, I don't think there needs to be any use of the Tenready to judge or compare or rank or assign labels or grades to not only teachers but to administrators, schools, or districts. And I will repeat that at the end of what I'm going to share with you. Nor do I think that the Tenready should be used in any way to impact students, and I'm not sure that that's not going to happen. I understand that their scores may not be part of their final grades, but they still will be labeled. There are 3 basic tests that will be required of our students this spring. One is the Tenready test, which will be given in 2 parts, and that is the one about which there has been much discussion. The other test is the WIDA test, which is a test for our English language learners. This is the first time that test will be given online. And also the MSAA, which some of you may know about, Special Ed Alt, which is really for our most severely cognitively disabled students. That is our 1% of students, and those would impact Reese Rogers, Northfield, Case and Lane, Scales, and Irma Siegel. If you have any details about that one, I'm going to turn you over to Joe. But Tenready is the one that replaces the old TCAP. We have 2 windows for that. One window that we were given, and again, this window was given recently. That is February 22nd through March the 18th. We will actually be testing the week of March the 7th. The second window for Part 2 is April the 25th through May the 6th. We will be testing the week of April 25th. The scores from those 2 tests will be combined. As far as WIDA, it will be online. It's given kindergarten through 6th grade for your English language learners. The kindergarten test has to be given one-on-one. We have about 109 kindergartners that will take that test one-on-one. We have about 657 students who are ELL students who will take the WIDA test. The estimated time for the one-on-one will be about 45 minutes per student. It can only be administered by ELL teachers. The problem that I have with that is you're backing your ELL students have to take Tenready, so they'll be taking it, then they'll be doing WIDA, then they'll be doing 10 Ready again. So really, you're only looking at a very short period of time, actually 10 days of instruction that you might say will be free of testing for those particular students and those teachers. So I have an issue with that. For the WIDA test, it will run from March the 7th through April the 8th, which you'll notice is similar to, so will be having WIDA in combination in many cases with the 10 Ready for some of our students. With the WIDA, we do not have a lockdown browser yet sent out, so this means that we're not sure exactly what that online platform will look like, so we're having to learn that. Also, with that particular online platform of WIDA, we thought that technology thought they would be able to push that platform out. They are not, so they're going to actually go around to each individual school and touch every machine that will be used for our WIDA testing for our ELL students. For our MSAA, that again is your old portfolio alt, which affects 1% of our students. We have been doing a portfolio assessment, but this is the first year that math and ELA assessment will be online. So basically, teachers will fill out, in many cases, the answers that our students give and upload that to a new platform. There also is a social studies and science part of that. Our teachers will be doing a screenshot of the MIST, or a screenshot of our students' performance, uploading it into MIST from that. We do not have directions yet on how to upload that into MIST. That webinar will not be occurring until March the 1st. And again, that particular test will run for ELA and math. That will be administered March the 30th through May the 18th. And for science and social studies will be March the 7th through April the 8th. As far as 10 Ready, I've already, so those are affecting particular student groups. As far as 10 Ready, we feel like that our students are as ready for that as possible. With 10 Ready, security has once again returned, so that before, when we had maybe 75 to 90 minutes that could be flexible when you gave it during that period of time that we had, the several weeks. Now what you're looking at is really having that time during a particular day and having a prescribed time for that. What that impacts is, for example, our ELL, our special ed rotation, will basically be shut down for that morning, where before we would have had additional time with our students. If our ELL and special ed are testing during that time, then obviously we can't be instructing them. So the first half of the day of that week will be shut down district-wide. Proctors is another issue. Normally we would be looking at getting proctors as early as October. Now we're looking at getting them now. That proctors are optional to schools. We do have a couple of schools that are choosing not to use proctors, but we have several that do want to use proctors. Really, the proctors are there as much as anything to protect the teachers in case, for example, if my scores were to spike all of a sudden, if there were any question about how I'd administer the test, the proctor would be there to assure the state that everything was done according to schedule. One thing we have learned this year, in prior years, everything was what we call pre-slugged. In other words, all the demographics on all the students, their names, any information about them, their teachers, that was already pre-slugged. Now what you're finding is our schools are going to have to do that. So anything that's related to coding that some of you will understand being in the schools, and the rest of you will understand because you've heard of it so much, but we're going to have to do that. Anything, in other words, anything associated with the subgroup, identifying Mr. Campbell as ELL or special needs or anything that would have to do with him is going to have to be put in by our schools. And the difficulty will be of that is when we get the tests back, then to check for discrepancies, our assistant principals are going to have to be careful to do that because they're going to have to make sure that the teachers or whoever put in that information did it correctly and it matches with what we have at the state level. That is a big deal for us. As far as the test booklet, now we will have a test booklet and answer booklet, but before your answers were just bubbled. Now they will be both bubbled and in writing. So in my opinion, the chances for mistakes there are greater. Our children have not had very long to practice that. Another concern we have is we have a concern about erasures. Last year, there were many school districts across the state that were questioned because their tests had more erasers than what they thought should be allowed. I think all the school districts were cleared up, but we do have a concern with that because in the test booklet you will have not only the bubbling, but you will have writing with our answers that will be extended writing, and so there is the tendency, particularly with young children, to have a lot of erasers, and so we are questioning that. As you might imagine, all of this is really taking a whole lot of time from our building level coordinators, and those are our assistant principals. So I really want to give a shout out to assistant principals for all the time that they have had with training and all the changes, to the principals for their patience while their other administrator was out of the building, and then also to Siobhan Davis-Lewis, who's done an unbelievable job with all this. Her whole year has been testing. After the testing is over, we will have 3 days to get any irregularities corrected, everything finished, counted, and sent back. So it's going to be another fast turnaround. I again am very thankful that the governor and the commissioner have seen fit to relieve teachers of scores, this year's scores impacting them. They still have the 35%, and there are 3 choices they have about that. They can take this year's scores. They can take the past 2 years' scores. They can take this year's and the past 2 years' scores, with this year only counting 10%. So I'm saying that publicly because that is information we have received this week. There are a lot of firsts this year. First, our 10 ready tests are not comparable to our former TCAP assessments. Secondly, we've had a lot of time that's been taken away from explicit instruction so that students can gain keyboarding skills that they needed. Third, we have a lot of districts that are in situations where, as we know, there was not an adequate amount of state funding for enough devices to take the test. And so for some school districts, not ours thankfully, but some, they have had to really scramble to find money from their funding bodies. And in my opinion, this puts in some ways that relationship with their funding bodies in jeopardy when we're moving to a paper pencil test this late in the game. We only recently received, actually 3 weeks before our online testing was to begin, we received guidelines for our ELL learners, for our English language learners' participation in the social studies assessment, and learned if they hadn't been here any longer than a year that they would not have to take that. 4 days before online testing was to begin, we were given a choice of paper pencil. On the first day of testing, within the first hour, we knew of at least 23 districts that had to shut down their testing because the online platform failed. A day later then, the decision was made that we would go to paper pencil. There have been a lot of accommodation questions from parents and concerns from teachers. We did receive information that basically there would be no different accommodations from paper pencil than what we've had them online, but that was a real question for us. We have the first portion of this year's assessment is being administered almost 3 months earlier than what we would have any other year, and what we were told really is that impacts 80%, that 80% of the major work of the grade will be tested on this first test. So districts have moved their whole scope and sequence up so that they can complete the major work of the grade by this time of the year. Writing has moved from a situation where we had writing ability as a separate assessment to this year it being integrated. So writing will be measured by the way the students respond to questions. We have a new accountability system that we're learning about with new rubric levels and new method of determining school rankings and new parent report design. Our cut scores will not come out until after test administration. We estimate that to be in October, while we will get quick scores at the end of May. There have been statements made that those are only really useful, and this is from the state, that their primary use is in giving students their final grade, but as far as judging really where the ranking of students would be or whether they're basic or below basic, remember those performance levels will not be determined until after the test has already been completed and returned. Staffs have been trained in administering online assessments, yet they're going to be administering paper pencil tests. Students have prepared for 7 months to get ready for online assessments. And then finally, the state has seen fit to give teachers a choice not to have the 15-16 data input as far impacting their effectiveness scores, and they are absolutely correct to make that decision. But I do think that I will be having a conversation with fellow superintendents this week about making a push for it not to just affect teachers, but also to not affect classes or schools or school districts. I think there has been enough question about the validity of this test that really looking at it impacting anyone and deciding whether a school district is effective or whether a teacher is effective or whether a principal is effective or whether a school is effective, I cannot find it within any of my knowledge that I have of assessment to make any reasonable assumption that that can happen.
With the paper pencil booklet, I guess, similar, does every child's name, student number, and all that information have to be placed on that booklet?
It's going to be, what you will find is you will find that information is going to be pre-slugged into a format someplace, and then what you will have is you will have the test just like we've had in the past. You will have the test booklet. My understanding is that you will have the test booklet, and then you will have your answer sheet, but your answer sheet will be a combination of bubbling and blocks where students will be able to write answers.
So will the answer sheets be pre-plugged before we get them, or do we have to enter that information by hand?
We will be, and my understanding, and Siobhan cannot be here tonight, and Sherry, would you come up and address that, what you know of that place? I've been dealing with the politics. They've been dealing with the other part.
My understanding is with the answer sheet, it will have to be bubbled in by the teachers or someone in the school building to do that.
Okay, so anybody in the school building can bubble in the child's answer sheet. It doesn't have to be necessarily that particular homeroom teacher?
Correct. At one time, it had to be a certified teacher, but I'm not sure that that's still true or not.
Okay, okay.
I would have to say that probably, in all reality, you'll see the teachers doing that because they know their students. Or you might have an EA. I could see an EA, but right now, with what is required of our EAs with intervention and everything else, I think it's going to be hard, Mr. Campbell.
Well, and I agree, and I can remember, and Joe can too, when it was just a way to do it. We just got 4 or 5 together after school,
right?
Those they could stay and said, okay, here's Andy Brown's class, so you bubble in all those and go.
Now, the difficulty is that there's so much demographic information because you have to indicate you're looking at ethnicity, you're looking at any kind of delineation as far as special ed, you're looking at all those subgroups we talk about are going now, since we split it up so much, that has to be in there.
Can't that information be generated from attendance, computerized reports on students and printed out so that when that teacher goes to bubble in his answer sheets, he's got that information right there in front of him, or not?
It can be, and that may be what happens, but I think now with the accountability, what I see happening is teachers going back and assistant principals going back and double checking to make sure it's right.
Oh, I'm sure you know they're going to double check. Why does a school not want to use monitors?
I don't know, and I haven't asked that. I think that some may feel that it's too short a turnaround to get them. I'm going to be talking with principals about that tomorrow, but I'm leaving it up to them. To me, it's their call. And what happens is with that, if they do this, if they don't feel that they have enough parent volunteers, then they'll be calling us to see if we can help with that. And there's one school I know that has chosen not to do that, and I know where we could get the volunteers, so I'll be asking about that. But it may be, too, that they feel that the students would be more comfortable with not having them. So that I'm leaving to an individual principal, because it's kind of like the decision when we had the choice of going online or going with paper pencil when that decision was given. The way I felt about that is yes, it impacts the district, but you're looking at it impacting those teachers more, and so I feel like I need I'm giving the schools that choice of whether they do or not. Now, if it's a reason that, if they can't find, then I'm all over helping them find the proctors.
At one point in time, we discussed the resolution.
Right.
Pertaining to
right.
holding teachers harmless.
Right.
Did we go forth with that resolution?
We held off on that because we did not know at the time that we were ready to present that to you is when the announcement, we knew there was an announcement coming. I do want to talk with some fellow superintendents about this. I want to find out whether it is a federal decision that there has to be that accountability associated or not, and I am not clear on that, and I'm not sure any of us are clear, but I think that's an answer that we need to get from someone.
Well, and that came to me, and I certainly want teachers to understand that I know this board, and I know you have, and other members of the central office, we have certainly been involved in the political part of all this testing stuff, head over heels, and we may not have sent a written resolution from the board, but I am sure that every board member has talked to those people in the legislature, and we are definitely in very strong support of teachers, and I think they ought to get scores on teachers' behalf and everybody.
I think that what you say bears reiterating. Sometimes resolutions are important because it represents the stand that a particular organization may be taking. But I have found, and this is Linda, but I have found it much more politically effective to make, or certainly as politically effective, to make those phone calls and to write those emails and to have that understanding of being very clear about where we stand with those people who make decisions. And I think the public needs to know that this board was very, very active with contacting the people who needed to be contacted. And on behalf of the district and the teachers in particular, I want to thank this board for that.
Well, I think we, in talking with other board members, we certainly had a major part in the voucher bill not getting any further than it got. I think. I like to think so anyway.
I think our teachers had a lot to do with that.
Yes. I'm sure they did. I hope they did.
Yes.
I hope we all are in this together. All right. I've taken my part. Ms. Smith?
I have at least 3 things to say about all your comments. One is I was in the schools, one of the schools, the morning that the 6th grade test was given, and they were the teacher, the assistant principal did such a great job getting the kids all charged up and ready to take their test. And then they take the test, and boom, they took the test.
Right.
Our 6th graders took the test. So I don't know if everybody knows that. Murfreesboro City Schools did that. So where is that test going to be?
If they completed the first, and we just received, and this is one of those that I have not looked in detail on because I looked at it and passed it on to Siobhan, knew what it said. But originally the state has said that they thought that all students would have to take Part 1. Now what we're hearing is if Part 1 was taken and submitted, that those students will not have to take Part 1 again. And the state has just, maybe yesterday or the day before, has given us a list of the students that will not have to take that test, and that's been distributed. But if they submitted Part 1 of the ELA and put it in as finished, then they will not have to take that again.
Okay, that's great. I think. I mean, it's not a choice issue. You're saying they do not have to, or they will not take that?
But if they submitted, the state has given us a list of students who do not have to take Part 1 again because it was submitted to and finished. So they will not have to go back. There was some discussion about whether they would have to do that.
Right. Okay. So my other comment is about TN Ready, and that is, it just seems like all we really need to do right now is to support our kids on this and support these teachers who've worked so hard. We pumped up as parents. We got our kids ready. The teachers got the kids ready, and then fail. So I just think we need to support and let the teachers know that we've got their back, that we are going to do what needs to be done. But everything is right. They should not be judged on what happens with this test, and our little people should not be
You're
judged.
exactly right.
And in some of our situations, our little people very likely could be judged, and I don't know how we can stop that.
Well, I think that what I would like to have clarity about from the state is I understand that the scores may not be back to October, so it may not impact their final grades, but I'm interested if I am still seeing performance levels for students, and that bothers me because that is labeling students. So I would prefer not to have any labeling, not to have any ranking, not to have any comparisons of anything associated with this test this year.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it sounds ridiculous. And then you listed so many tests. We need to get rid of some of it. I mean, I don't know. Are all of those tests we are required to take?
Yes.
So what
Part
can
of them
we do
federal
as a
and part of them
school
state.
board? Because we also have the MIST test. I mean, we have several other tests that the kids have already taken. And I want the teachers to get to go in there and teach and be creatively teaching our kids
I agree.
without having to worry about how they bubble in something.
Assessment should be for improving student learning, and I'm not sure at all. I don't look at this assessment. I look at this as testing. To me, this is not assessment. Assessment is where you look at something, you learn from it, and you help improve student learning. To me, this has become more of a way to label and measure and compare, and that is not benefiting students. And it doesn't benefit
That's what the MIST
teachers.
does, is it helps all along. I mean, we're already doing that, right?
Well, the MIST is really the online platform. It's really the practice to get ready for
the team
right.
ready.
And some school districts have even given, we did not, but some school districts have given, like their midterm was taken online, getting ready for it. So I think that I understand that there is an assessment committee formed at the state level. I'll be very interested in what comes out of that, and it's already out, but I'll be interested in how meaningful that becomes. I think there's a difference in reality and perception in this case. I'm not convinced that, certainly for us as a 3-6 district, I don't see any of the changes that have been made at the state level or federal level benefiting us in any way by taking anything off as far as accountability, which is the thing I'm most concerned about. It's one thing to take a test and get the results. It's another thing to take a test, get the results, and then have to put up with having public comparison that changes year to year, and to spend from June until now discussing those test results. We needed to have been teaching children and teaching them how to learn instead of teaching them how to take a test.
Agreed.
Dr. Brown?
One question, 2 comments. One, do you buy ibuprofen in bulk?
Dr. Brown, I love this school district, and if I weren't working with the people I work with, the teachers and principals and administrative office, I would not be here. But I'm committed to this district, and I will tell you that anyone that is in this district and teaching, or that is an administrator in this district, cares about children, or they would not be here.
First comment, for a situation where supposedly all the parties involved want a strong public education for our students, I cannot imagine a more complicated situation than has developed. And I don't see how, as it exists at this point in time, the public schools can succeed in doing what they're being asked to do. So because of that, my second comment is I understand the personal contact, and I think it's great that you have those conversations. I think the board needs to continue to have those conversations. I realize that some of it may not be controlled by the state, some of it may be controlled at the federal level, but I would like for this board to consider tonight that we go ahead and approve some type of written communication that expresses our frustration and our concerns and our recommendations about how these test scores be handled.
My last statements were taken from a resolution I had prepared. I would be happy to re-prepare that resolution. I may add a couple of lines since some things have changed since that was prepared 2 weeks ago, but I would be happy to prepare that resolution again for you all.
Thank you.
Would that be
All right,
ready?
let's see, Mr. Barrett and then Ms. Phillips.
Would that be in ready to be in time for any sort of be effective?
Yes, the
Okay.
accountability is the piece. The
Okay.
testing is going to happen, and I understand that. But what happens with those results is a whole different ballgame.
Okay. Ms. Phillips?
I want to echo just a little bit of what Dr. Brown said. With the best will in the world and with all these dedicated educational professionals, I have no idea how this circus developed. And I just want to commend you and your staff for managing to juggle and keep everything going in our school system with this. This has just been such a debacle. But thank you, and thank you to your staff.
Well, and thank you to the school staffs. The assistant principals, the principals, the teachers have been really amazing. And the frustration that they felt, you would not have known it. So principals who are representing the other principals, please extend that to them tomorrow.
Yeah.
I am sure that people with the Commissioner of Education's office and whoever else, whatever the company's name was that was in charge of the massive online test taking, certainly would have rather that mess up not occurred.
Right.
But at the same time, now that it has and that it did, I would hope that those people that make some of those decisions at the state level would understand that they need to not only take it off the shoulder of the teachers, but also administrators, central office, students, anybody that is relatedly concerned or involved in the testing. It didn't work. Okay, it didn't work. I'm sure they wanted it to work. We all wanted it to work, but it didn't. So now as our students have to go and do the paper testing, hoping then that those people, like I said, at the state will think again on some of the things they do.
And I appreciate the Commissioner's communication. I think she has tried to communicate very well with us. I think this is a situation where we look, though, and we say, are the results really going to be reflective of what our students know? That's the bottom line.
Dr. Brown?
Could your letter reflect the frustration that the testing and the testing schedule dictates that a large percentage of the teaching needs to be done by this time of year?
Yes, actually, in the resolution itself, it refers to that, and it talks about that the first portion of this year's assessment will be administered almost 3 months earlier than previous years, requiring 80% of instructional content to be severely compacted.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that report. Good discussion. All right. Next item. Psychological reports. We might need those.
I know it. Mr. Marlin.
Board, you had asked me at an earlier date to report on our changes in the preschool program, and at that point I realized that there were a lot of things we probably needed to update you about, or at least help you understand some of the workings of our special education department. So tonight I asked some of our school psychologists, while they're coming, let me ask the two ladies that are going to speak tonight to come on. We have 8 school psychologists, and they're going to tell you tonight about what their responsibilities and duties are. I want to tell you this story real quickly, though. We don't have them all here tonight. We have 2 that are out of state and on business, and then we have one who's not here tonight. She tested all day yesterday, and to let you know about her dedication and the dedication of these people. This is the way they operate. She fell yesterday morning on her way on her way to work as she was getting ready for work, and came and tested preschoolers at Northfield and was busy working with those little guys, and that's a real active process. And then found out that arm was broken. So she's not here tonight. She's recuperating. She completed that testing and did so. And I think that really, I wanted to share that because I think that just tells you the type of people that we have working in this department. But tonight I'd like to introduce Mary Beth Baker and Allison Payne. They're two of our school psychologists. They have a presentation for you and a slideshow. And once again, I'll be quiet and get out of the way and let them tell you more.
Can we get our slideshow to work? Oh, no. Oh, wait, it's okay. It's still there. We thought we lost it. Thank you for your time.
Yes, we appreciate it.
Okay, so, I've always clicked the wrong button. Our first slide is our mission statement. We got together and after I did the Leader in Me training, I decided the school psychologists needed a mission statement. So we got together and wrote our mission statement, and it's that as school psychologists, we will serve as advocates for all students and their families through promoting and supporting evidence-based practices to enhance foundational learning and the future success of students. As school psychologists, we are uniquely qualified school faculty who strive to improve the overall success of all students. Every school psychologist must obtain an educational specialist degree, so that's how we're uniquely qualified. In order to get our license, we have to go further in school, so we get some specialized training. We are school team members, so we bring a distinctive skill set to the problem solving of the needs of students. We're individuals who can increase student achievement by identifying diverse educational needs of students. Our roles and responsibility include, we serve on lots of different teams, on IEP teams, on RTI teams, on behavior teams, on student support teams at multiple schools. We conduct comprehensive evaluations, observations, screenings, to help make data-driven decisions, to help students meet with success at school and improve student achievement and behavior. And we guide special education teams in helping them make determinations for eligibility for special education services.
And like Mary Beth just said, we're members of teams at each of our schools. We're on the IEP team, and our job as part of the IEP team is to review and interpret the comprehensive evaluations. And 90% of the time we conduct and write the reports, and we help the team understand the children's testing and make eligibility decisions, and we help in the development of appropriate IEPs for children's needs. We serve on our school's behavior teams, and we help develop behavioral interventions to improve student performance and achievement. We are on the student support teams. We help the team determine if a student needs to be referred to special education. We explain the process to the parents. We obtain initial consent for assessments and just kind of guide the parents through the process, helping to educate everybody on the team. And we are part of the RTI team. And the RTI teams meet at each of our schools at least one day a month. Some of the schools, most of them meet 2 days a month at each of our schools to discuss grade level by grade level the children that are at the high end of the spectrum and how we're meeting their needs, and the children that qualify for the intervention Tier 2 and Tier 3 services. We are liaisons. We're liaisons to parents. Many times we are the first people that communicate to a parent that we suspect your child has a disability or your child does have a disability. That's one of the harder things we have to do sometimes, is explaining that to parents and guiding the parents through that process. And many times parents come to us after they've been to a doctor or they've been to a counselor and get a diagnosis, and they come to us and say, okay, we have this. What can we do in the school? We work with the community agencies, with the Guidance Center, with the Mental Health Co-op. We work with private counselors, outside tutors, many different agencies. We work with the doctors, with the service providers that work with our children and their families. We talked earlier about, Ms. Smith mentioned MTSU, and we partner with the school psychology department at MTSU, and we guide a lot of the students through all of their field experiences. From their first year, Dr. Russ likes to have them come out and have that hands-on experience. We get practicum students and interns every year.
And they keep us adept on new things that we may not know about.
Yes.
And always try to learn from mine.
And we need test kits, and we borrow from them. So it's a give and take relationship. It's a wonderful relationship that we have. And of course, we're liaisons to our faculty and staff as well.
We also are consultants in our schools and outside of our schools. We're the legal special education consultants in our schools. So we're the first people that they go to. Now, we often call Joe. But
and Joe calls Kelly.
Yeah. We don't know the answer. But they come to us first. And hopefully, if not, we know where to go to get the answer to those legal questions. We're consultants when it comes to instruction and maybe how to help students access most appropriate instruction in the classroom, those students that we work with. We're consultants when it comes to least restrictive placement, a comprehensive development class or a behavior classroom. When is it appropriate? When does the student need more than what we're able to give them? And have we tried everything that we possibly can try before we consider those more restrictive placements? And we're also consultants to the response to intervention and instruction in that aspect, in that we help guide schools in what we have to do in order to make a determination of whether or not a student is responding to that instruction and intervention, and what we need to do before we decide to move forward with a referral. We also are assessors. We're qualified to administer a multitude of assessments: cognitive, achievement, adaptive, behavioral, and social emotional. We are assessors when it comes to whether or not a student meets the disability criteria in the state of Tennessee, so eligibility standards. We assess and interpret school and response to intervention data. So a lot of times that's how we're used at those meetings, is to look at the data and help drive a decision based on that data. Lots of different data. And we also use assessment and data interpretation to drive intervention and improve student performance and behavior.
And then here's some of our data that we've collected this year. We collected our data before Christmas, but at that point, as a collective group, we had worked with over 500 students. Some screening, some counseling, behavioral interventions, or comprehensive assessments. And we projected from Christmas out to the end of the school year, we would be conducting 250 of the special education 3-year reevaluations. Every 3 years, the children have to go through the reevaluation process. And last year, we had Jolene kept for us how many assessment protocols we used, or she ordered for us, and it was over 2,075. And that's a big part of our budget, is that was over $5,000, close to $6,000 of the special education budget last year is all the testing booklets and the materials we use for our testing. And then because there were new standards, when the state that gives new standards or when our diagnostic and statistic manual is updated, we had to have all new IQ kits and things to meet regulations. So that was a huge part of our budget for last year as well, was buying those new test kits that we need, which we don't need every year, but last year was a big year. So here's pictures of everybody. Here's your team. And then there's our contact information and the schools that we have. We have Jess Graham is our RTI psychologist, and Kelly Heflin is the preschool psychologist. Then each of the rest of us have 2 schools that we serve in our caseload. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Let me ask the other 3 school psychologists who are with us to stand so you'll recognize them. You'll see their pictures. Thank you. I want to thank them for presenting this information for you. I do want to say one thing. I think Allison pointed this out. One of the toughest jobs that they have, and they have a lot of tough jobs, but one of them is facing parents and letting parents know that your child has a disability that may affect them for all their lives. Sometimes parents know that when they bring their children to us at schools, and sometimes they don't. And so that's a really difficult part. And as I watch them carry out their duties, that's one of the things that I look for, that they do that compassionately and caringly, that they reach out, that they work with the other professionals, as Mary Beth mentioned, working with the doctors, the clinicians, the therapists, whomever. And so that's a big part of what they do. So, but I did want to let you know about that tonight. As I've worked with the board previously, I realized there's things we can help share with you, and I hope this was informative, and we'll be glad to bring you more information as we can. Any questions?
Thank you very much. How many total school psychologists do we have?
We have 8.
8, okay.
One that's dedicated, you met Kelly, she's the one with a broken arm. She's dedicated to the preschool. She does all those evaluations. So she's busy, and actually she extends a little time in even after school is out, because we have to continue to do those evaluations and those meetings. These 5 work in schools. Michael, who's not here, so we have 6 that serve schools, so they each have 2 schools. And then Jess Graham, who works with RTI, and she is a really valuable part of that team. That RTI is looking at the children's response to interventions, making sure that when we see they have difficulties, we apply those interventions. We try to overcome the difficulties the children are having, and then measuring the response to that. And so that's her job as part of that.
All right, thank you. Ms. Phillips, you have a question?
No, I just had a comment. I want to thank you all because you really impact the lives of children and families, and our teachers do too, but in a very unique way that I personally know is very important. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies, for your report. Mr. Marlin, we appreciate you being here as well. All right, next item.
We're ready for the revenue expenditure report. Before you do that, Mr. Anderson, how many psychologists does the state pay us for?
3.
Okay, so this board, when we talk about the whole child and we talk about really looking at children, again, thank you, board, for providing the funding for those additional 5.
Mr. King?
I did the math. I mean, and they do over, if they did over 2,000 last year, and I'm assuming 180 days in a school year, that's over 11 assessments or evaluations a day. 180 days, over 11 a day.
250 plus each person to be responsible for.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
Mr. Anderson, talk to us about money. How much more we got?
Well, I am happy to report that this is the month that we finally go into the black and get out of the negative. As you know, it's based on sales tax collections, property tax collections. Last year at this time, we were up $983,710, and this year we're up $1,567,000. So that's really good news to where we are right now. We're glad to report that. On the income side, the reason that we're having a better year and is because our sales taxes collections are up over $567,000 over last year at this time. That is significant increase for us. And our property taxes are up significantly as well, but since they're not totally due until February 28th, that number kind of varies back and forth, but it is also up. We have been notified by the state that we will be receiving growth payments again this year because of our student enrollment growth. We've grown, as you'll see when I get to the other report, 357 students year to date, and so they have estimated our growth at $1.2 million additional BEP money coming to us. So, and that is an estimate at this time. It changes as we go through the year. Revenue-wise, as you can see, our revenue collections are up 57%, and we're at the 58.3% of the school year. Revenue collections are 57.3. Last year at this time, we were 54.7. So those are all good signs on revenue.
Mr. Anderson, I have
yes,
a question. What fund will that $1 million plus from growth funds go to?
It goes into the BEP monies that come in.
Okay, so then we're allowed to do whatever we want to with it, or?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And basically what it is when we hired additional teachers and stuff, it covers that.
Right.
So it comes into a revenue account, and then we expend it out in whatever account we need to expend it out to cover the district.
Is there any left over?
Well, we hope there's always money left over at the end.
Yeah, I know.
We don't know what it'll be, though.
But I would be interested to know how much we would have that might be left. I mean, you don't have to give me today, but, you know, when you have a sense of that.
Okay. All right. On the expenditure side, we have spent 51.8% of the budgeted money. Last year at this time, we spent 49.3%. Obviously, since our revenues have increased, our expenditures are going to increase as well. We feel pretty good about the expenditures and where we are right now as well. So I did want to point out that I've been tracking the electricity and the gas and the water usage. Electricity year to date, as of today, we're at 57% of our budget, and this is through January, so we're actually a little ahead. We're in good shape there. Natural gas, we're at 51% usage of our budget, so we're good shape there. The one we need to really check on is our water and sewer is higher. It's at 65%, so I really need to find out what's going on there. Remember, this is through today, and so at 58%, you add about 5% more. We should be about 63, so we're slightly over the usage there. Also want to point out gasoline. For our buses, we are very thankful that the prices have gone down. We're at 36% of our budget usage as of today, which is really nice to be in that position because we understand that the prices will be going up again, so we're glad we're there. But I thought those are significant numbers for you to know about in our operating budgets. So if anyone has any questions for me on our budgets, that's where we are today.
Personnel?
Personnel report is in your packet. If you have any questions, Mr. Ringstaff is here. Or we can discuss it later if you have particular questions.
Well, we have our job fair coming up.
Yes, exactly right.
Do you want to say anything about that? Or?
When is it?
Ralph, talk about the job. And also the virtual.
I guess our fourth annual job fair is going to be March 19th, Saturday, from I think now around 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock a.m. We will have all the principals there interviewing candidates, and we're also already taking applications and interviewing right now. We're in the process. We anticipate hiring between 80 to 100 teachers this year.
Have we hired any yet?
We've hired a couple on a generic contract.
What's a generic contract?
That the school is undetermined and the grade level is undetermined.
How are those hired? Do they just, like, for example, a senior in college might send in her resume and then what?
We can do a virtual interview, two-way, where they're seeing us and we're seeing them, and then they have sent us videos of them teaching a lesson, and then we have a phone conversation with them.
Sorry, Mr. Campbell. I said, I'm sorry, I forgot.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Okay.
Any other questions on the personnel report? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, next report is your enrollment report, and attendance is at 98% for the month of January, which obviously is excellent. Our pupil-teacher ratio is at district average 19.85. Our growth from the end of last year is 357 students, and our enrollment currently is 8,420.
Wow.
And so we continue to grow, and that's why we keep adding classrooms and new buildings and trying to keep up with that growth. So if anyone has any questions for us there, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions on growth?
Is my memory correct? Our attendance last meeting was 97, so we jumped up a point, which is good.
Yeah.
Any other business to come before this board?
I had something.
Okay, Ms. Phillips?
Just two things. I just wanted to express appreciation to Ms. Spencer and her staff. I had the opportunity to go by and talk with them, as I'm sure every other board member has had, to our various schools that we were assigned, to encourage the staff to, find out about some of these legislative issues that might affect them, such as unfunded mandates, and one thing and another. And they were very gracious. I was lucky enough to have Mr. Washington go with me. He wanted to go with me, and I wanted you all to know that he did that, because I really appreciated that he took the time to go and encourage the staff to let them know that he wanted to let them know that we do care, and he cared, and about it, and to encourage others to, use their voice, because their voice is important. The voice of the teachers and the psychologists and various center staff, they're very important in this community, and the legislature needs to hear them. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to tell those of you that are here, and maybe others, there will be a memorial service Saturday morning at 10 o'clock at First Baptist Church on East Main Street for Dr. Mary Tom Berry, who passed away a couple of weeks ago. Many of us worked closely with her and had her as a teacher and a comrade and everything else. So she was a great lady, as Dr. Gilbert and I have discussed, and certainly was a proponent for public education and young people as well. Anything else come before this board tonight? I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Second?
Second.
Any opposition? Good night.